So, yeah, so if you want to put your name and where you're calling in into the chat, you can. You don't have to. And we'll listen to three sounds of the bell. And as we're listening, we can just come back home to our breathing, to the seat that we're sitting on, to whatever can bring us back into this present moment so we can be fully here together. And I'll turn this time over to Marcella. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Marcella.
Thank you. And for those coming back, thanks for coming back for a second round. We didn't quite finish last time because of the shortened time. So um, we'll just continue. I had all these slides and we got through about 2/3, but we sort of stopped at a good place, I think, kind of talking about the history a bit, focusing in on Baltimore as a example of this history and how it plays out, how it played out, the legacy of uneven development, what we call uneven development. And at that place was where we stopped. And we're just about to start talking about what do we do moving forward? You know, it's good to look at the history and understand, hey, this is a history, and this is why we've created uneven communities, and this is how it looks. And so what do we do with this knowledge and the insight? How do we move forward from there? How do we correct the past and move forward? And so that's what we'll focus on this evening. And let me share the screen. All right. And let me go to here, because this is where we ended last time. So this is a good cap on the end last time. So this whole legacy of uneven development, the way we've segregated racially by income, wealth, in building our communities, right? And so a lot of people look with disdain, like these people in this car, on the communities that that really they have created in the process of how they've benefited. It's a great caption, right? I just got a 200,000 tax cut. I love this country, but why is it such a dump? It's like the perfect koan, the teaching of I'm like this because you're like that, and you're like that because I'm like this. And yet, because of the cloudiness of our mind and heart, um, our greed and our aversion and our delusions don't allow us to see how what is happening to me is impacting others and vice versa, right? And so this is kind of where we ended talking about the history of disinvestment in Black communities, in low-income communities, in the as the foundational way that the United States of America was built. Um, and and this image here from Wilkinson Pickett in The Spirit Level: Why Greater Equality Makes Society Strong, um, the book and the research that informed that book just shows across the world how the greatest inequity, countries with the greatest inequity have the poorest health, and the countries that are moving more toward equity have better health. And so this caption here and this image sort of wraps it up. It's really a good um, it's a deep wisdom, right? This teaching right here. Um, I want to also invite in, as we did last time, that um, when you see the image of a nature slide, it's an invitation to take a breath in and just recenter, just follow your breath and just come back home. So what we also know is when we start talking about inequities, um, there's a way that people who have any kind of power, and when I say power, I mean thinking about social locations and how, when you do work around anti-racism, anti-oppression, or what's some nowadays called the DEI work, um, we kind of paint a picture, a power analysis of the way power is distinguished or distributed in the world, really. Certainly in this country, according to race, it's people, just in a very dualistic way. And we know there's different ways this plays out, right? The critical race theory tells us a little bit more about how there's intersecting, right? These locations intersect, but just in the most simplistic way. We'd say the people who are white have power and the people who aren't don't have power. Um, Gender-wise, we'd say male-bodied people have power over female-bodied people. Income-wise, we'd say people with money, resources, different kinds of resources, not just money, have power over people who don't have those assets, those resources. Sexual orientation, we'd say people who are heterosexual or claim heterosexuality have power over those who don't. Birth in this country, folks born here have power over those who don't. And it goes like that. We're not going to do it all. I'm just saying that whenever we talk about any one power dualism, and in this case, we're talking a lot about race and class, there's discomfort for people who are in either categories, not just racially and class, but other identities. And so if we're going to really have deep conversations to transform and heal, we're going to have to learn how to be comfortable with the discomfort, right? And so these slides of nature is a way to, in the midst of discussions like this, that we can come back to our breath and keep grounding ourselves. For those of us who have this practice, We know what that means when you're invited to take a breath in. We know one breath begins to bring us back, two breaths, and then three, right? And so the slides of nature, we also know that just looking at a slide of nature begins to relax this vagal dissociation or this fight or flight. So there's many things that happens when you see a slide of nature and then you're also taking a breath. And so you see these slides of nature every 4 or 5 slides that we did the last time. And this is to help us just stay present, because everybody can get triggered. I know trigger is like an overused word these days. Um, and yet our system gets activated or shut down, right? We dissociate. So, or we want to just leave or, flight. So, yeah, just take care of yourself, right? Like get up and walk away or whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. So you'll see these kinds of slides. This is the title that we started with last month, Emerging from the Illusion of Separation. Mindful resistance of uneven development in Black and Brown communities in Baltimore. And if you remember, we talked about the red line map. This is Baltimore's. We talked about red line maps for any city. And that if you think of a person's body superimposed here and the emerging from this illusion is, the understanding is that if we ourselves are not fragmented, we wouldn't create cities that are fragmented, states and countries that are fragmented. And so this is really, I really like to superimpose this figure, as we did in the first half, because we can't get away from the fact that systems are built by people. And it was individuals who drew these maps based on their perceptions of what was right and what was not right, right? And so it's really good to think about, it's not just changing the segregation that we see here on this red line map of Baltimore, it's also changing the way the individuals are seeing so that they can have the insight and the heart space to have deeper understanding, and not draw maps like this that continue to be drawn, right? We still, um, we still continue these kinds of, the banking industry still lends money according to race and class. um, yeah. So this emerging from this history that we hold in our bodies and our hearts and our cities, our households, it's kind of like, I think sometimes it's like this little tugboat pushing this big old barge in front of it. It's a hard thing, right? It's like going against the stream, right? And so it's good to acknowledge sometime that the work of freedom, freedom, political freedom, social freedom, and also especially the freedom inside ourselves, it's hard work, and it actually hurts, right? Someone said to me the other day, um, uh, this meditation stuff, someone more recent in the practice, that it's painful, that the things that are coming up, they're really painful. They don't know if they want to deal with it. Right? And so all of us know, who've been practicing, know that this is the truth. And so that kind of looking inside ourselves to kind of dig in to find that inner self, that more truthful self, that more, uh, the diamond in the rough thing. It's hard and it hurts. And so I think this work, on the social level, it hurts too, and it's hard work, and it's and we want to turn away from it because we don't want to think about, how did I participate in it? How didn't I participate? How did that happen? What was I doing when all that was happening? What were my parents doing? Right? And for those of us who may still live in these communities that are the legacy of this uneven development, um, the trauma of being in communities that are still segregated and still disinvested, um, and trying to heal that trauma is also hard work and very painful, right? Um, yeah. So um, the big thing about emerging from fragmentation of any kind is community. Because what fragmentation does, what separation does, is it, if you remember last time, it moves us from a community of cohesion, right? People living together, taking care of each other. So there's like, it's like water, there's cohesion, yeah. And then over time of this continued separation, fragmentation, which is what gentrification and displacement has done to especially Black communities that have been serially forced to be displaced. It goes from communities living together, taking care of each other over and over until you just have people living together. There's no cohesion anymore. People are taking care of each other, what we call, there's no social capital. Um, in the community. And so that doesn't allow people to organize and build power, to speak up for themselves, to have the power to challenge policy, speculative development, et cetera. And so emerging from this fragmentation really means when we come back together as a communities, organized communities, we adhere and we have cohesion again. And that this power that we lost from being so fragmented, we regain some of that power, right? We have strong networks, and such strong networks hold us together. We get capital, social capital. We participate again because we feel value. We know someone's got our back, and we know our voice is heard. It's not just pushed to the side. So we actually go to city council meetings, right? And if there's organizations in the community organizing folk to go to, like this evening, there's a big city hall meeting on a new bill that was introduced, some legislation that says taxing cannabis, sale of cannabis, that the majority of the, I think it's, no, actually the majority, 35% of that needs to go back into the communities that have been attacked through the war on drugs, right? Because if you think about it, we're kind of moving in this way. So now cannabis is okay to be sold, and all these people who have been incarcerated, and the effect of that, the evisceration of our communities by having so many in our low-income Black communities, having so many young Black men incarcerated. That's that's another form of displacement and fragmentation of communities. And so then organizing people today to go to City Hall to support and testify on that legislation. So people will go to that when they feel they're part of a community, right? They see people like them going and testifying, and that gives them the spirit to do the same. So this coming out of this fragmentation and rebuilding this cohesion is so critical. And it starts with the individual, right? It starts with each of us. So, and this is how change happens in anything. So these arrows need to be opposite. So if you look, oh, there's my little cursor. Okay, here. So this arrow needs to be turning backwards. So this circle wants to say that change happens on the individual level, and then the individual in their own sphere of influence, what we call, right? Like, so their family, their community, their neighborhood, their workplace, their school place, where they go to dance and hang out, or where they play music. Um, uh, they affect that area that they're in, on that organizational level, if you will. And then that gets larger. It affects the whole society, societal systems, the structures, the policy, right? That redlining map, the policy created based on that red line map of who would get loans, right? That became a structure in the way that money was loaned and communities were built. So when we start changing ourselves, we start impacting all this, right? Because the reason, so this little diagram, I think many of you know it, it didn't have the arrows going both ways. So Marisol was trying to put arrows going both ways, and then you see what she did. She put them going the same way. So they need to be going in opposite direction, because what I was trying to say here is that not only does the society influence the individual directly, but the individual can directly influence society and a bigger and at that level. And all this goes back and forth, right? It's not just one. It's not a one-way way that we affect change. So the understanding is, sometimes we think in our social justice movements that it's all on the organizational and on the system that affects the system. And we think about the individual as far as the individual coming together to organize a group of people, collective. What we still in many spaces haven't, we talk about it, but what we still aren't doing yet, um, I think sufficiently, is the inside ourselves, what happens when we breathe and we start coming back to our body, and how we develop stillness so we can see what we're doing, so we can hear the words we're saying when we speak to someone. Are we being violent? Are we attacking the person because we see them as our enemy? And so are we doing the same kind of things that have been done to us in the name of justice, right? So we all do this. I mean, I've done this a lot in the past, right? Um, it's part of how we were trained to do the work, unfortunately. And there's change now. We talk about, oh, we don't want to just be transactional. We want to be transformational. We want to do deep change. We want to bring a different way of being into our justice spaces in doing this work of how we rebuild communities and all the different segments of those communities, right? Transportation, housing, education, recreation, and everything, right? Education, health. Um, so in all the spaces that we're doing this work, we want to think about how we're individually transforming ourselves. And that's where our practice as people who practice mindfulness, or maybe you practice with a different way of pausing and being reflective to see what is it that you're bringing into the space, right? Um, and this, that part of the title, the mindfulness, a lot of us here are mindfulness practitioners, and so we understand what that means, right? And we know that who we are is what we're bringing into the space, and so that individual change is so critical. I think a lot of us who do the work of rebuilding communities toward justice, um, in different sectors, um, we a lot of us have got the organizational change down. We do the power analysis: who's got the power, which politicians do we need to talk to strategize. We have the systems, like this is how the system's flawed. We need to change legislation. We need to introduce legislation. We need to do a different program. Then we need to replicate it and scale it. But a lot of us yet haven't been able to stop long enough and find that stillness, um, to see what else in us we need to heal, so that the way we step into these spaces of change, um, is also reflective of the love that we say that we want to bring into spaces. So we don't hate folk who are doing the wrong thing, right? Um, um, So those of you familiar with Baltimore, it's getting to be warm temperatures, and then the dirt bikes are out. So we have a lot of folk Yeah, and where I live on Broadway here, man, it's a like one of those main streets that folk do the dirt bike outing, uh, especially Friday and Saturday evenings. So that was the background if you heard it. Um, yeah, so okay, I'm gonna invite you for a breath. Um, I remember I learned this last time. If I stay on the slide too long, I have to go out and come back. I think I have to stop the share screen and then go back in again. Okay, yeah. So, um, what I'd like to now talk about is the sort of the big framework of the kind of change that Valar, Village of Love and Resistance, which I'll focus in on as an example. And Valar is not the only gig in town. There in actually in Baltimore, there are other organizations that are also doing awesome work around land justice, community land trust movements. Um, so I want to shout that out. And I'll focus on Valar because that's the organization I'm a part of. And I think we're doing good stuff. The framework, the bigger framework that we're working on is a solidarity economy framework, right? And so this is, for those of you who may not be familiar, it really is a movement that is looking at bringing all the pieces together in how we think about equity and justice, right? So here I'll read this: the solidarity economy is a global movement to build I have to move the little thing here. To build a just and sustainable economy where we prioritize people and the planet over endless profit and growth. Growing out of social movements in Latin America and the global South, the solidarity economy provides real alternatives to capitalism where communities govern themselves through participatory democracy, cooperative and public ownership, and a culture of solidarity and respect for the earth. And so if we put them into focus points, and this is the way we talk about it in Valar when we do our political education, um, these big principles, solidarity, mutualism, cooperation, equity in all dimensions, all the locations, race, ethnicity, nationality, class, gender, LGBTQIA, and other identities, primacy of social welfare over profits and the fettered rule of the market, sustainability, social and economic democracy, pluralism and an organic approach, allowing for different forms in different contexts, and the advancement of that change is necessary and inevitable, and a bottom-up approach. So we break it down and kind of take each one of these and often do role plays on what they mean. And this is what Valar, the Village of Love and Resistance is trying to do, right? We're a collective. Um, uh, we are building, constructing in April. Hopefully, we're waiting for the permits. Supposed to be Friday. Um, an intentional residential community, which is the plan is that folks who are social justice activists and have a practice, some spiritual practice that grounds their work, would be living there, and we're developing social contract for how that happens. What does that look like? Um, that's the housing component of the smaller building that we own. And then the larger building, the church space, which is about 12,500 square feet, that will be renovated right now it's called a community hub, but we're also going to have a whole collective process for naming the building. But that's going to be office and incubator space for Black and Brown owned and led organizations, shared office space, entrepreneur space. We'll have a wellness center we're very excited about. We're already doing wellness circles, um, probably once a quarter, where we do community acupuncture, community yoga, mindfulness, walking, and sitting, and nutrition. We talk about nutrition, and then we'll actually have a center where folks who practice body modalities can either co-own a space or rent and provide services for the community. Um, we'll be involving folks to be investors. The community will be investors to co-own the property. So this is that portion of the work that looks at the economic aspect of stability and even development, right? So our investment plan is such that a person can invest for as little as $10 a month, and become a shareholder in co-owning this property. Um, and yeah, so they'll be owned by residents, and a daycare and a commercial kitchen and an event space. The daycare was decided on through a charrette process with the community as the number one thing, and a commercial kitchen for people who are already doing small catering out of their houses, that they can have a space to go and do larger amounts if they so choose. And the event space, because um, it's just so nice for folks to have a beautiful space to come and have the repast, someone's graduation, someone's birthday. Oftentimes, what's available for the cost is some buildings that are really old and not up well, yeah, it's not well kept. And so it's just going to be really beautiful for people to be in a state of the art place to have those kinds of functions. I mean, why not, right? Just because you're poor and you don't have a lot of income, you shouldn't have to be stuck in a, I'm not saying anything bad about church basements. We use a lot of them right now. We rent them for meetings because we don't have our own space. But wouldn't it be wonderful if folks could have access to beautiful things as well? Um, yeah, this is a favorite. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. James Baldwin. So just a few things about Volar. This is our logo created by one of our caretaking council members, Kenneth, who's our community artist. And he lives actually right across from the building. Um, he's a wonderful artist. And this is the actual building. So the smaller building on the left is the one that I was talking about being the housing, the residential part, and that's where construction is supposed to start. I don't know, in April, I'm told. And then the bigger building is the church, which will have all the other things I mentioned, the community hub. And then to the right, so where the fence is to the right here, this is also connected to the land. So this will be a play area for the children. The city requires certain square foot of play area for each child. And then here, right here, and a strip of land here is where we've been trying to purchase from the city of Baltimore to turn that into a community garden, the People's Meditative Garden. And we're now trying to move that forward, and hopefully that'll happen soon. So this is Villar's mission, to co-create a cooperative community in East Baltimore owned by Black and Brown people, seeking to build a cooperative community through the reclamation of land, through healing, through reconnecting and building a base of community power. And this is the way we are building a base of community leadership. We do organizing, door knocking, doing meetings, inviting people into our membership um, throughout this whole area here. This is also the area that people are going to be invited in to become investors. So they go through the financial and social education program to do that. Um, and eventually, as you see the arrows, we want to move outside of this initial area as far as membership, as far as investors. We're going to limit the investment to a certain locale, and actually we also have an income criteria because um, because the area is undergoing gentrification, because Hopkins is right here, so there's a lot of people who um, uh, speculate, buy a row house, renovate it, rent it to students or faculty or staff from Hopkins. We must put in an income criteria, because the kind of investment we're offering is not for everyone who can access the typical investment market. Our community members can't do that, can't access an investment opportunity for as little as $10. And Volar is not about trying to um, uh, engage that particular community in the investment option. But right now, the membership committee is working on a new category of members called Friends of Volar, where we want to start having folks who are not in the immediate community becoming members of Volar. Um, and 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 this will be folks who not necessarily live in Baltimore City. They can live anywhere. So really friends of Valar, just like when we say friends on the path, right? Friends on the path of Valar's mission, of how we achieve that. And we're developing criteria. We have criteria for local membership as well. And there'll be similar criteria for what we call Friends of Valar members. And just to give you an idea of how we're set up as far as governance, we have a board of directors because that's required for the federal nonprofit status. And then we have a caretaking council. Really, everybody on the board of directors right now is on the caretaking council. And really, this is the leadership council. This is really what happens. Who does the work is right here on this caretaking council. And then we have committees of the organization, which, as you know, is very typical of many organizations. And the committees really, the committees do the work: the organizing committee, the organizing school, the base building, the ownerhood, the organization development, the cooperative living, fundraising, the Enter Street. This is a group trying to go about acquiring the property next door. And folks on the committee are on the caretaking council. And we hope to, the way we build leadership is invite the general membership to work on a committee. And then after working on a committee that has people from the caretaking council, folks learn about the organization, learn about our ethics and our values, practice our ethics and our values, and then are invited to apply to become part of the caretaking council. And of course, a board of director. We don't hold a lot of, we don't buy into this whole board of director thing as far as the hierarchy of that. So this is why we really work through the caretaking council. And some of the work that we do, so one of the things that the solidarity economy model does is it's about political education. It's about mutualism, all those principles we talked about. And so we're really working, like practicing with those systems, right? So we call it mutual aid, social and economic system. So we have a food mutual aid where we provide food to the community. All the volunteers on the mutual aid committee are people in the community, people who came through the line, say initially, and they really liked what they felt, that people weren't judging them or looking down on them. And um, for folks to become a volunteer of this committee, they go through an orientation where we practice nonviolence, because people coming through the line are people who like have had a rough time of it, right? And the way we talk with people, it's really important, and we have to be able to hold what people are bringing in that line, so that we don't lash out if someone grabs food when we ask them not to do that, or someone doesn't wear a mask and we ask them to put a mask on. So we go through a whole orientation with our volunteers. Then we have the wellness space that I mentioned. Every quarter we try to do a wellness event where folks, we have community acupuncture and doing yoga, because healing is really important. We talk about trauma, how it shows up in the body and the mind. Um, the organizing school does the political education, does the learning circles. We had a great year last year of our political education outside in the yard. And membership is a big thing, how we build membership, how we build leaders. So we really take all the big principles and we try to incorporate it, practically, not just write it on paper, but we really try to practice with it. Um, And I want to close just giving a quick look at our investment strategy. This is how we're looking to build this community investment trust fund. On the left, this is how folks are investing in the building. They can invest up to $10 to $100 per month. Um, we also here, we have national investors. So really these are um, big investors or loan products that may be needed in order to get this building renovated. We really hope we don't have to, but a couple of the models we're basing ours on had to do that, have that larger investor amount. Um, and then money after the building is renovated that continues to go in as a revenue or income are the people who are going to be occupying the space. And then the money that comes out to our community investors, what we're looking at is 6 to 7%. So as you know, if you do any investment, actually, if you try to do a CD, you're lucky if you get 0.5%, right, on your investment savings account, what 0.05 or something like that. Um, but we're looking at 6 to 7% back to our community investors because we really feel it's important to be able to show people that if you put money aside, there's something that comes from it. Now we know $120 at the end of the year, even 6 to 7% on that. We're not talking about building asset or building wealth. We're really talking about building community and starting to think about what a solidarity economy looks like when people collectively come together to own stuff, and what do they do, how do they take more pride, how do they see that this is something of value to them, right? And then of course if we have these national investors, um, we won't be looking at more than 1% back on that investment. If they're loans, of course, it's even going to be more than 1%, probably like a 3 or 4%. And then, of course, um, paying out what we need as far as our upkeep, utilities, et cetera. And so we use this when we do the ownerhood training on the financial literacy, help people understand what the program is about. This is our timeline and where we're at. As I said, we're hoping to begin April, that's next month, with the actual renovation of the small building, and finish that sometime in September. And you see here, it's a completion of 1031, that's the small building, and begin renovation of 1025, that's the large building. So we're hoping that we've got schematic now of the large building, and we're hoping to finish concept design of the and have construction documents by September so that we can actually begin and finish the large building in a year or something like that. Of course, this all depends on money, but we're always optimistic. This is one of our fairs, our community event. About to have another community event, May 6th, fundraiser and cleanup. So I'm going to close with this, conditions for us to make change and to make peace manifest. Transforming ourselves is so huge. It's a big thing in the work of justice, so that we can transform the oppressive social structures and norms, right? Um, as we said, know the history so we don't keep doing it over and over again. Listen to local experts, the affected community that we're trying to work with. We can't go in, helicoptering like we know the community. We need to listen to the folk who've been there, what we call the historic or legacy folk. Build coalitions across issue and convenience, not just what's easy, but the hard stuff. And then on the policy level, right, we have to vote the people in who represent the work that we want to do, and vote them out when they don't do it. And this whole idea and understanding and practice of a human rights agenda, we really need to take it up more. And I think I'll close there. I think there's another image here. So I'm happy to have comments, take questions, hear your story of similar work or work you think is building on this kind of alternative way of rebuilding communities of justice. Yeah. Or if others have any other things or ways they want to use the time.
Looks like Murad has his hand up. Murad, you want to go?
Thank you. Yes, if I may. Thank you very much for a truly inspiring presentation. I have one observation that I wanted to offer for the audience and for you, and then also ask if it's possible for you and me to exchange emails, because I have some things I wanted to send you that might help you in the process, some writings I've done in times past. The observation I wanted to give is, I think if I remember correctly, the title of the talk talks about separation. And on one of the slices, you had fragmentation. And I want to draw a distinction between the two, because fragmentation is actually very good. You know why? Because the power of the totality of what is fragmented, it's like a DNA. It goes with all of the pieces that are fragmented. So if anybody thinks about, oh, we're just going to fragment the whole and therefore quote unquote conquer the total, it's not going to be possible, because every fragment maintains the power and the potential of the totality of it. Separation, in my mind's eye, is when you basically cut the umbilical cord. And I have found in my life so far that as time moves on, separation is becoming harder and harder, because people are beginning to realize all of that which you've presented, which is we're all part of the same chain. And so if you might as well be sitting on a branch and cutting off the branch on which you're sitting, and people don't do that typically. So fragmentation, I think, is really good, because every single fragment maintains the potential. And to realize that, imagine how much power is then developed in the community. We see that happening right now in Israel. People get out, 500,000 people in the streets demonstrating, saying, you are not going that way. And we can take a lesson from that for ourselves. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you. I think, were you here last time?
I'm sorry I missed it unavoidably.
Oh, okay. So there was a slide there that talked about the effect of disorganized community and how it becomes fragmented, which is why I was talking about cohesion earlier, because what we find in communities like East Baltimore that have been historically over and over again uprooted and placed in another area, uprooted in places, is the bonds are broken. When those bonds are broken, it's almost like people are looking around trying to remember what was over there. The places have been completely um, gentrified. There's new buildings. People forget their addresses. They forget their locale. And this kind of fragmentation leads to people feeling very disempowered. Um, so the way I'm using the word, it's not something that has come together. What we find is when there's intentional organizing around the history and understanding how it came to be, um, something changes. People become activated. People start to think about, oh, this isn't me. I didn't cause this. You know, the media tells Black people that it's this, you're the blame for this. So this history, understanding it differently, it really does something different for people to actually come together again. So this is the way I'm using the word. And in my history and work in East Baltimore for the past 30 years, this is indeed what I've seen and experienced through organizing, what happens when you do that. But I'm happy to hear what you say, and I'm happy to exchange emails to learn more how fragmentation works in different spaces. Thank you.
I think Camille has another question. Camille, do you want to open your mic?
Sure. It's not really a question, it's to call. Well, yeah, just thank you for this. I was here for the part one, and but it's really, yeah, thank you for this. And I'm actually thinking about how I could be a part of it. But anyway, that's another thing. I guess I'm just kind of curious. You mentioned how the community that is being served is also like a part of the like with the mutual aid for the food or whatever that. So I'm just curious, like what kind of responses are you seeing with people? What are their dreams, their fears? I mean, just being a part of this, just being an active part of this community project. Like, I'm just curious, like what kind of feedback are you seeing from people?
People feel very responsible. Once folks become volunteer in the mutual aid, people show up every Thursday. We do a circle, we ground, we check in what energy you're bringing in the space before we go out on the line and put the food out. So people take real ownership of and stay till the very end of how that happens. So it's not just in the mutual aid though. As I was saying, we have, like last night we had our membership meeting. So people came out and talked about the committees they're part of and how they want to get involved. We discussed how we do financing and budgeting, and why fundraising is so important. Ask people to, say what's needed for an organization like Volar to be effective. So people are taking responsibility. The whole idea of Volar is to develop community leadership so that it's the community that runs the whole organization. And that requires continued education, political education, leadership development. We're having a leadership development retreat in June, I think late June, with current committee members, where we just do a lot of work around organizing what that means, power analysis, what that means, why it's important to do this kind of work and learn the history, learn about positive movements. So folks are very excited about an organization that listens. I mean, that's what we hear a lot is Volar listens to people. It wants to hear what people think, what folks want to see on the land, what they want to see in the building. The fundraising committee, which I'm a part of, we're planning together the fundraiser. You know, we go down the list and people are like, yeah, let's give away a hot dog and sell hamburgers. That way we get them hungry and then they'll want more. So yeah, it's really a whole collective process of building community, reconnecting, people listening to each other, learning people's names that they may have lived next door to or two doors down and previously didn't know. People come to the ownerhood training and they get to know each other through meeting together, doing something. And previously, because there wasn't that activity, they didn't know each other. They didn't have this connection or, chat together. So all the things that begin to make a community, a group of people who live together, a community where they talk to each other, look out for each other. This is a kind of thing of rebuilding those bonds again, and that takes a long time. That's really the work, actually, is rebuilding community. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Good evening. This is Magda. Hi, Marisela. Nice seeing you again. I didn't attend last meeting, but I saw the whole almost the whole video, and I really enjoyed it. And as you know, I'm part of the Engaged Mindfulness Working Group of our Sangha, and we were very happy to collaborate to support your organization last fall, and we are thinking about ways of again supporting your organization. And I understand financial is very important. It's a very important way of supporting your organization. But I'm wondering if you have anything else in mind where we could build community with you without patronizing or telling anyone what to do. Like if you have any ideas, or if you don't, or later you could email them to me, because eventually we'll probably, I'm pretty sure the working group may be interested in working again with you, or for you, or with you, or however you want to say it. Thank you.
Thank you, Magda. And yeah, maybe
Okay.
maybe we can take that up. And that what I mentioned, the Friends of Valar, that's exactly what we're looking at with that, is how can we really build relationships, and not just a moneyed relationship. I mean, yes, money is important, we need it, and also we know that people's hearts is important. And so how do we really build that together, that bridging relationship? Any organization that stays too insular, what they call bonding and bridging relationship. If it's too much bonding inside and it doesn't bridge outside with other communities, it doesn't last. It's not sustainable, right? And that's the whole solidarity economy as well, is bridging beyond what we know already. And so the Friends of Valar is this, but we had to get our group first in line, right? We had to know who's our community, and now we have 35 members, local members, who come regularly to meetings, who are on committees, who are learning about leadership. And so now we feel we can start to open up into, as I say, the Friends of Valar, and figure out what that looks like, and how do we make sure, just like you say, that people don't come in and try to say, bring in their expertise and tell folk what to do and not be culturally sensitive. So that's all real, and we're not pretending that may not happen, because it happens often when you open up groups. And we feel like we can take care of that, because we want to practice with love. We want to practice with how do we really build this out, so it's a big, broad community that can get replicated, not just in East Baltimore, but beyond, because there are many communities like East Baltimore.
Dear Maricela, there's one, Sue has her hand up. I don't know if you have time for one more question. And also while I'm holding the floor, I just want to say I put into the chat an event that the monastics from Plum Village are coming into town and will be offering a beautiful event in downtown Baltimore at an organization called Nomu Nomu. And the funds that whatever you give to that will go to both to that organization and also to Volar. So please check that out. It's going to be really wonderful. And Maricela, what do you think? Time for one more from Sue?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, short one, and then we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcetta. Sorry, I've had trouble getting my little hand to raise, but I don't know why. Anyway, my comment, I did watch, I was unable to attend, but I did watch the last video, which was beautiful. And this one, and I'm grateful to be here. My comment, I suppose, I worked for about 35 years in the inner city in the barrio with Hispanic and bilingual clinics, and also working with community to build networking, and found out how much difficulty there is in housing injustice and getting loans. And so one of the things we did was work with local business people who were part of the community who had some success to help microfinance housing and loans. But then there still wasn't enough money. So some of us that were in the world of caring about this also worked with that to help finance loans for people to be able to buy their own houses. And I don't know if you're trying to hold this just with the community to empower them, which I understand, but if there was a need for some other money to help finance it, I would be very interested in knowing how to support that. And the other thing is just in the world of Volar, if there's a way for outsiders there, or again, if you're trying to just keep it inside the community to help empower and support, just to make donations or do whatever would help get this more off the ground. Sue, bowing out.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Yeah, and maybe that's another offline conversation that I'm happy to have around the microfinancing and looking at the other ways, and also to other forms of donation. Yeah, totally. I'm gonna put my email in the chat, and I invite let's see, google18@gmail.com. I invite folks to, especially for some more conversation, to please reach out, and then I'm happy to respond. Yeah, I want to really just shout out the folks here who have been working with Volar already. Annie, who's a huge supporter from the very beginning, you know, and Rhonda from the very beginning and consistently supporting Volar, and Abby, who along with Annie and Tom and Daisy have been meeting around how do we in the mindfulness community, in our community, encourage and educate our sanghas around the kind of work Volar is doing to support us, to you know, basically invite different sanghas to do a fundraising month for Volar in the area. You know, we have so many sanghas, and the work of Volar is really the work of our community. This is the kind of work Thai did, you know, in Vietnam when he went to communities that had been devastated by war. And how do you rebuild it from the ground up, without telling people what to do, but listening. And so our communities are devastated by racism and oppression, redlining, urban renewal, and we're saying, how do we rebuild it in a more beautiful way? So we really, as I said, this group have really been like thinking hard about how to do it. And the fundraiser that Annie mentioned is certainly a part of that. Another way, Magda, as she mentioned, and the Sangha have already started to do that with Valar. And I see some of you, I see Judy, who, you supported us. Oh, there's Anne. I see you, Anne. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the whole thing. Um, in different ways, right? It's not just, we live in such a monetized society that people think that if you don't give money, you're not really a supporter. But I want to just say that one of the reasons that we have the Friends of Valar, and we're trying to develop that out, is we want to get to know people who support us. Yes, we need money, and we need people, we need the hearts, we need to like get beyond this fragmentation. We need to rebuild in such a way that what the gentleman said can really happen, right? And so there's the healing that has to happen, because the fragmentation is real and it's left a lot of scars. That's what trauma is, and we all have scars. So the Friends of Valar is going to be figuring out not just how do you get involved, and some of the things is we want you to attend I don't know how much it is, like 1 or 2 political education events a year, so we can all learn together, co-learn, and learn from each other. So the support is really going to be how do we learn and undo this whole thing in a more beautiful way, and not just see each other as different and leave it there, and throw some money and think the problem is solved. Yeah, throw the money. Again, I mean, we need money, so I'm not going to pretend we don't need money, y'all. And I want to say that it's more than that. It's about hearts. That's why it's called the Village of Love and Resistance. It could have been resistance. But love is, as Earth and Zenju Manual says, we got to be free enough to resist with love. And that's what we're trying to do, is resist this onslaught of greed and hatred and delusion, so that we can really bring out everything else that's there. And we're going to have to do it together. So that's why we can't stay stuck together. We have to just within an enclave, just us, we have to really bridge out. And so as we grow, we're gonna build that out. And hopefully one day we're gonna be having mindfulness retreats at the hub, and people are gonna come and participate. So yeah, right, that's right. Yeah.
Dear friends, anyone who's interested in, has the time to be involved in that community of fundraising, sort of supporting, material support for Volar, you could email me or Abby on this call if you want to really join in a serious way. Otherwise, you can also just go to the Volar website and donate and throw the money, as Maricela said. So that's another way to do it. Thank you all so much for being here. I want to honor Maricela's time and all of your time. And Adriana, do you have anything else you'd like to say before we finish the bell?
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maricela, for this amazing topic. And thank you everyone for being here. Thank you.
Yeah, without you, we couldn't be here. And without Maricela, we wouldn't know about this amazing work being done within a mindfulness and a love context, which is very, very inspiring to me, and I'm sure to most of us here. So we'll finish with a bell and just regather ourselves to go about our rest of our business for the day, and maybe holding each other and all beings in our hearts as we listen to the bell.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Be well.
Thanks, everyone.
And we have another session about this, no, Annie, on April 5th.
Next week, yeah, next Wednesday. Well, we'll break out into groups and talk about what we can do to make change in our own lives and around this topic, and talk about what we learned and support each other. Please come back. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Adriana. Thank you,
Thank you so
Don.
much.
Thank you, Don.
Yeah. To everyone.
Thank you.
Be well.
Thank you, Sue.